Hi and welcome to this new video about MyAniMATE3 features. Today we're going to take a look at the animation tools, and we will start with the Human IK rig tools. Alright, then we'll also going through the standard skeleton rig, probably in a second video, so to not to make it too long and too complicated. So the animation tools for the Human IK rig tools is something that, of course, is going to be useful to transfer your animations over to the character that you have. Now, let's create an animation. So we are going to use the Human IK animation example so that we have our friend here, right? And then we're going to grab our character from the other video. So I'm gonna browse scenes AniMF avatar open, and in this particular instance, since I have saved it with the standard skeleton rig already already set up, I cannot delete it, which is something that I should do, delete it. I will just import it instead of referencing, because if I reference, I cannot delete stuff from a reference file. Okay, so rigging tool, standard skeleton rig, remove that. Cool. Back to the animation tools. I want to have her going back to the really default pose. So we're going to remove animation, which means that it's still anyway going to reset the pose to the original, even though there was no animation. Okay, so now we can go back to the rigging tools, and now that she's free from the standard skeleton tool, I can go to the Human IK rig and characterize her. Default name, I don't care about the name, is fine. Okay, so now we have both characters, one with animation. We have a characterized second life animation. I know for a fact that this character here and this animation here is 133 frames long when the FPS is set to 30, which is not at the moment. So let's set that up. And you can see and you can understand when an animation had a different frame rate than what you have set here. Because if we go back to the 24 FPS, there are these dashed line frames here, which basically means that they are fractional frames, so that they're not sitting on a real frame on the timeline. It's between 14 and 15, for example, between 15 and 16, somewhere around, could be somewhere around near the frame, but not exactly on the same. That is an indicator of the animation not being at the same frame rate that you have set here. So we're going to set that to 30 FPS. Cool, and I'm going to set this to 133. Make sure it starts from 1. Okay, cool. So we have the whole sequence there. We also have our character here, and in the list there is also the dummy animation there. We don't need to switch character now that since we have created our Second Life avatar character, and so what we should be changing now is the source, where we have a few options listed. But if you have another characterized Human IK character in the scene, it will be listed here as a possible source. The more you have, the more of these options you will get. So you have, say that you have imported dummy fight 3 times, you will find dummy fight 1, 2, and 3. and so on and so forth. So once I choose that as a source, you see that our character is actually snapping and following the animation. Alright, and HumanIK is super good at rescaling also the step distances in regard of the actual size of the source compared to the size of the character that has to get that animation. Okay, so select the main controller down there. In the animation tools, I'm now going to bake to skeleton. And we have a few options. Detected animation length, meaning the animation length that has been attached to our character, not the human IK, is 0 because there is no actual animation. It's a copy of the transforms, so of the rotations and so on, but it's not actual animation curve. So it starts at 0, ends at 0 because there is no animation. How do you wish to proceed? You can do animation length anyway, which will default being 0 and 0 to time range. You can do the time range, so we know that this animation is 133 frames long, and it will be a 133 frames animation, or you can just cancel to make sure that you're grabbing the portion of animation that you actually need. So I will do the time range. Give it a second to bake. And now let's take the dummy fight and hide it. And now the animation is actually attached to the avatar. So the avatar is getting now real animation curves and real frames and whatnot. Okay, every single joint that was involved in the animation. The face, for example, is never included with human IK because human IK does not do faces. Okay, but everything else just got uh, their keyframes. Cool. Which means that we, at this point, we could even remove everything else that we don't need anymore, like dummy fight object here and the character from the selector. We don't care right now, but you can well do that, no problem. Now, again, with the selector here, now you can either transfer to the standard skeleton rig, which we will see for the next video when we're going to move on to the standard skeleton rig tools, or you can bake to human IK rig because maybe you want to make some modifications and whatnot. So bake to human IK. Now the animation length, it has been detected correctly, as you can see, and it starts at 0, 133. You can do animation length, a time range only if you just wanted a section, for example. Let's do animation length. There we go. Now we have all of our controllers and everything that actually has gotten their nice keyframes for animating and modify your animation. Okay. So now um, when you animate using the human IK, it's always a best idea to select the controller that you want from this selection thing. Okay, this is selection interface. Because these joints here are still selected. These are being driven. These aren't the human IK joints. Indeed, if we get close and close and closer, we can see that there is like a yellow thing inside. Character control, left forearm. That is the human IK controller. Okay. So, yeah, that is something to keep in mind to make sure to select whatever you want to change and to modify from this interface. You can even select more things together if you need to. Okay, but it's just it's safer. Okay, say that is safer for a correct selection, and you're not adding unwanted keyframes onto the wrong objects. So the original skeleton is the wrong object at this point. And now the thing is that we have a few options here. So when we select uh, any part of our Second Life avatar, and namely it would be best to select this controller, you see that this thing, when I deselect, it snaps to 0 because there's nothing. When I select it, something changes. So these are options available within the human IK character node that is hidden and not really easy to find and select, and also the option within that node, which is kind of crowded, is not really easy to find and to animate. Now, these aren't things that you should be animating. This is not accepting keyframes or whatnot. It is like a permanent settings. So, for example, when we do an automatic shoulder, which by default is always set to 0, okay, and we have the single body part selected. If I grab that and move it, you will see that nothing follows, right? But if I put this up to 1, that's the maximum, and pull it, you will see that the shoulder automatically follows to make a nicer human-like movement, because that's what happens. The clavicle starts going up as soon as the arm reaches the same height as the clavicle. All right, and maybe 1, you may find it to be 1 will means 100%, but you may find that to be not really how to say, not really exciting as an effect, and maybe you want less. You can still, you see, have that effect to happen, but not as strong as it was before. Now the top spine correction is always set at 0.5, which is, let's see, no, not that one. You see that's bending like that. If we put it at full body IK, you see that the top spine starts following the neck. If I set that to 1, the effect at this point is way more pronounced, right? It's just way more evident. So I wouldn't do that like full. And also the lower spine correction, which is this one here. Okay. Also that one would be a good thing to be able to control, so it's right here. So the lower spine correction is going to help. You see, it's not that strong of an effect, but it's now bending a little. It's all controlled by the algorithms within Human IK to be as human as possible. And as you can see, the bending here is more pronounced than before. Okay. And then these two more options. Now, we have the mirror pose, okay, which is available for the rig, but only when you have the rig's skeleton, which means these sticks here in between, okay, and it does not work on these controllers. These are the IK controllers, all right? So this mirror pose does not work with this controller selected. It only works when you have these FK bones selected. So to select more than one here, it's not that straightforward, but you shift does not work. Okay, shift just switches. You have to hold down control and then select more than one. So I'm gonna select that one and I'm gonna mirror the pose. Right, it's grabbing the whole thing. Sorry, I misremember that. Yes. So you can mirror the entire pose only and not on a selection base. Okay, and then we have the mirror animation, which is going to do a mirror of the whole animation, but the animation needs to be baked onto the skeleton. So say that you have done your transfer, you have done all of your modifications to make sure that for example, there aren't intersections, or you want to fix the fingers or whatever, right? Then you're ready. You would bake the skeleton. So that the animation, the modified animation now is being committed onto the skeleton, so the new animation is actually matching what your modifications were on the rig. At this point, you can mirror the animation. Which did not update immediately in the viewport, but as you can see, it's now mirrored. So let's mirror that back. You see no update, Maya quirk, but as you can see, the thing works. Now the mirroring happens across the y-axis. So the x-axis is the front. The mirroring happens across the y-axis because that's the left and right direction for Second Life avatar. And then when you're done and you have maybe just exported that animation, you want to restart the process all over without having to, you know, reload the character and redo the characterization and whatnot. You can save off the file with a name. Cool. Then save it off with a new name and remove the animation. Animation's gone completely. And so it's like you have a blank slate again to start with a new animation to retarget without having to go back to the create character, reference the file, grab whatever you need, you know, find it on your file system and whatnot. Alright, so that's all about the Human IK rig tools. We will see the option of transferring to the standard skeleton rig in the next video so that we can introduce the standard skeleton rig tools with using that animation that we have seen before in action. So that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.